Do you check under the bed for monsters before you go to sleep? Double check the closet to ensure the boogeyman isn't hiding inside. Are you afraid of ghosts? Then perhaps you should stop right now, because we're about to delve into the world of the paranormal, and this true tale isn't for the faint-hearted. Today's terrifying story comes from a subscriber and good friend. For her family's protection, we will call her Dee. So if you're ready, my friends, sit back, grab a pillow to hide behind, because today's true tale will scare you to the core. Welcome to True Tales with Dee's story, Living in Fear. I had a paranormal experience, very pleasant though, that I'm aware of. But let me go back to the beginning and give you my medical history, because maybe that's why I had the experiences and or why the other weird things happened too. When I was 1.5, I stopped breathing. They didn't know how long for or if I passed, but I was blue and my mum found me. My dad tried to resuscitate me, but eventually it was the EMS people that got me breathing again. The strange thing is that they thoroughly checked me over and said I was fine. They couldn't find anything wrong, but ended up saying that maybe I could have held in a fever. No one, even to this day, that I've ever spoken to has ever heard of that, but okay. I mean, it was like 1970, so the technology was so great back then. I'm definitely saying this sarcastically. Let's continue. I'm a klutz. I fall down and go boom a lot. I've had many head injuries, some minor and 2 major, but most when I was younger. And again, in the 70s, all they would say is, "Oh, she's fine." Anyway, I'm not sure of the year, but between 1995 and 1997, I spent the night at my cousin's house in Delta, Pennsylvania, right over the Maryland border. She was renting a very old house with her husband and 2 children. Me and my cousins were very, very close, so I would visit a lot when she moved. The one thing I do remember is that the detached garage had a year plaque on it, and I think it said 1867 or 1857, something like that. So definitely an old house indeed, with an extremely creepy basement. The day we finally got brave enough to go down to the basement, there was a summer fireplace down there and we wanted to see it. But we freaked out because there was thousands, okay, maybe not that many, thousands of spiders dead and alive down there. We screamed at the top of our lungs as we ran. We joked that we may have woken up the ghosts. Well, let me tell you. Later that evening, I was up late by myself. I was putting my cup away in the empty sink. I walked to the right of the kitchen table in the middle of the kitchen, but to the left was a translucent but visible Civil War soldier dressed in blue, a hat, and those gold-braided ropes for decoration on his uniform. It took me a slow second to compute, but when I understood what I was actually seeing, I ran to the sink and dropped my cup in. I was so afraid to turn around, but I had nowhere else to go, but either outside or back up through the kitchen. I spun around real quick and walked rapidly through the kitchen. As I glanced at him to see if he really was there, he tipped his hat at me as I passed him by. He was so polite when I think about it. A gentleman really, but still, I was so terrified of seeing a real ghost apparition for the first time in my life. Anyway, I ran up the stairs as fast as my legs could carry me into the room I was staying in. there's only one problem. The kitchen I had ran from for my life has a set of stairs upstairs too. They were blocked off by a drywall, but those stairs led directly to the room I was staying in. Of course, I freaked myself out and became even more scared. All I could think about was the ghost could obviously climb the stairs to here and come through the closed-in wall to the room. So, as quick as anything, I grabbed all my stuff and obviously spent the night on the floor in my cousin and her husband's room. The funny thing is, I never actually told her about my experience until years later after they moved back to Baltimore. Unfortunately, she and her husband are both passed now. A couple of years later, in 1997, I unfortunately lost my sister. 6 months later, in March of 2000, I had a run-in with a spree killer. Moments before he started killing, a manhunt ensued for almost 10 days. I was obviously worried for my life, as I was almost his first victim. When my mum saw dead bodies underneath sheets at my apartment complex, I knew I had to lie and never let her find out about what he did to me and how I almost died right after my sister. This killer had been a monster for a very, very long while. He once took his girlfriend's parents as hostage in Dundalk. This was just shortly before he went on the killing spree. This spree did not last very long. The police shot him 20-something times and killed him later in the standoff. The real scary thing is, it turns out I went to elementary school with him. So moving on a couple of years, and at this point in time, my parents were moving, and my brother ended up buying our childhood home. He convinced me to move in with him and pay half the mortgage. Around this time, he found his second wife and sold our home to me months later. This was in the springtime, April or May of 2004, and that is when more strange paranormal encounters started to happen. So, let me tell you about the strange water puddles. So after my brother had moved out and I was living in our childhood home all alone, this is when the water puddles started showing up, almost in the middle of the floor, not near the fridge, nor the kitchen sink, and not near the kitty's water dish. I would continuously go and wipe up the mysterious water puddles, but they would always reappear without a cause. I would continue to clean them up until I couldn't ignore it anymore. I asked my dad and my brother if they were making the puddles or if they had seen them before. They both looked at me very confused and said that they'd never seen them. We owned the house from 1969 in a brand new row of homes until I lost it in 2015. So what is happening? I couldn't take the weird stuff happening anymore, so I actually ended up moving to Ocean City, Maryland in 2014. The mortgage company really didn't want my house. It was upside down by that time with the real estate market, but by 2015, the foreclosure took place finally. My nieces and nephew lived in and out down here on and off for a while. My dad passed in 2020. My nephew passed in July 2021. I'm telling you this because that's more strange and very unusual family deaths with no known causes. Oh, and speaking of the strange, before I forget, let me tell you something. So my brother is divorced now from his third wife, but when they were married, they both had houses. She conveniently moved her and her kids into his, whilst getting rid of his kids and making them leave the house. She rented out her house whilst he made all the repairs on it so the county would allow it to be rentable, but always had trouble keeping tenants. Strange. She decided she would only pay her mortgage on her rentable house, but refused to help my brother with his bills or any of the food, etc., even though they were living together with all her children. He ended up having to do whatever he could to make ends meet, got out of his management, took a regular job with less pay, and he ended up losing his house too. More bad luck living in this family home. So in the end, they ended up moving into her house that she would normally rent out. Here's where it gets really strange and not normal. My brother had fallen down the stairs, like I did, but mine was in 2006. He messed up his heel and had to have surgery. Plates and screws were inserted, just like me. And not long after his fall, the same thing happened to his daughter too, but she did hers roller skating. I never really thought about it before, but sometimes I feel like it's a family curse. Anywho, he had to stay home for a very long time, and he learned the hard way that his third wife was actually into witchcraft, and apparently not the good kind. He never really believed in witchcraft and spirits before, until he saw a woman, translucent but clear as day, come down the stairs. She glared at him and then held her finger up to her lips to say, "Shh." As quick as she appeared, she turned her head and went through the front door. On several occasions this happened. Then, after she left the door, there was always a black mist-like cloud. My brother says he doesn't know what was coming down the stairs and stopping in front of him in their dining room. But anyway, my brother, being my brother, said he walked right through the black mist, and as he did, he started to cough and gag, an experience he had never, ever felt before. The reason why I mentioned all this is because maybe it's just my family members. Maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe it really is a witch's curse. Or maybe it's nothing at all, but I wanted to give you the full scoop. So that brings us to present day. And this is something that not only spooks me, but I find very, very intriguing. So the other day, I had just finished watching your first haunted paranormal story, The Hauntings of 30 East Drive on your YouTube channel. And when I tell you that my blood ran cold and shivers ran down my spine is an understatement. And let me tell you why. So just last week, I came out to have a smoke. We have a screened-in back porch. My dad even had it screened in underneath to prevent bugs from getting in. I went to sit down and what looked like bird poop was on my cushion. Then I looked around and it was like drops everywhere, kind of like paint or bird droppings. I touched it, and when I realized that it was a white chalk substance, that's when I freaked out, because just like in your video and what happened at 30 East Drive, an unknown white chalky powdery substance was found inside my closed off property. No honest explanation as to how or why it was there. I asked my brother, who had moved down here too, after his son, my nephew, had passed. I asked him if a bird was in the porch, I thought I'd asked him because he gets up early for work, and he said no, there's no way of a bird getting in here. Here's the kicker. The door was locked from the inside, and the sliding door was locked from the inside of the house. And the Ocean Pines brags about being one of the 20 safest places in America. That doesn't mean anything really, but it is kind of safe here, so the chalk couldn't have come from a break-in, if you get my drift. My niece seems to have abilities, but she doesn't like to talk about it. But I know that she sees and experiences the exact things that we have over the years. My mum shares a couple of stories, but kind of gives off the impression that she doesn't quite believe in it, you know? To admit such blasphemy. And, well, I'm just a klutz. So that brings me to the end of the strange things that I've grown up with in that very old haunted house. I still believe the soldier was kind and a gentleman, but I still can't wrap my head around whether it's just one family's bad luck with a clumsy child or whether we was under the witch's curse. Thank you, Chantelle, for taking the time to read my true tale. I love your videos and can't wait to see more. So there we go. That was a really spooky true tale from a very good friend and subscriber on my main channel. Let me know in the comments what you think went on throughout the years in this house with the family. Was it just an unfortunate family's demise? Was it all down to simply being clumsy? Or was it in fact an evil witch's curse? Thank you for listening to True Tales of Living in Fear, the True Story. If you have a true tale of your own and would like me to read next, then email me at shaniuxa1@gmail.com. I look forward to hearing your true tales. Remember, be kind and spread positivity. Love is the key to happiness. Thank you again for listening to True Tales with me, your host, Chantelle.